Ever wonder what happens when a clever peasant meets funny animals and tricky people? Get ready for The Good Bargain, a hilarious adventure where wits always win.
A cheerful peasant, with a big smile and bright blue eyes, once sold his cow for 7 shiny thalers. On his way home, he walked past a shimmering pond where little green frogs hopped and splashed. From across the water, he heard their constant rhythmic croaking, "Aik, A-I-K, A-I-K, A-I-K." "Ah," he chuckled, stopping to listen. "They must be confused. I only got $7, not 8. He walked closer, calling out, "Silly frogs, it was $7. But the frogs kept croaking their tune, making his face red with annoyance. "Fine, count it yourselves," he exclaimed, flinging the 7 shiny thalers into the pond, watching them disappear. He waited until sunset, but the money never came back. After this peculiar day, the peasant, still bright and hopeful, soon bought another cow, a sturdy, brown and white animal. He shrewdly planned to sell its meat for a good profit, hoping to make up for his lost thalers, and even keep the valuable hide. When he arrived at the town gate with the fresh meat in his cart, a large, playful group of dogs suddenly gathered. Leading them was a grand greyhound, sleek and fast, with intelligent amber eyes, about the size of a small deer. The greyhound eagerly sniffed the meat, barking, "Wow, wow, wow, wow." The peasant, used to talking to animals, said, "Will you promise not to eat it all, and guarantee your friends won't either?" The greyhound responded with an even more enthusiastic, "Wow, wow, wow." Convinced, the peasant left the meat for them, expecting payment in 3 days. 3 days later, the peasant woke up filled with excitement, imagining his pockets jingling with money, but no one came to his door. His patience ran out, and shaking his head, he decided to march straight into town to find the butcher he believed was responsible. The peasant found the stout butcher behind his counter and boldly demanded his money. The butcher, a stout man with a white apron and a red face, thought it was a very strange joke and burst into laughter. "No jesting," cried the peasant, his voice firm. "Didn't the big dog bring you the entire cow 3 days ago?" The butcher, now red-faced with anger, grabbed a broomstick and, with loud shouts, drove the peasant right out of his shop. "Hold on," declared the peasant, dusting himself off outside. "There is still justice in this world." He decided then and there to seek the highest authority, the king himself, led into the splendid royal palace. The peasant stood before the wise king, who sat on his grand throne with his beautiful daughter by his side. The king, a kind man with a gentle face, wearing a golden crown and a rich purple robe, asked the peasant why he sought an audience. "Alas, your majesty," the peasant began with a dramatic sigh, "the frogs and the dogs have taken my money, and the butcher has exchanged my goods for a beating." He then recounted his entire extraordinary tale, explaining everything with many hand gestures. As the peasant spoke, the king's daughter, a young woman with long golden hair, bright blue eyes, and a sparkling blue gown, burst into the most joyful laughter the palace had ever heard. The king, absolutely delighted by his daughter's rare laughter, smiled broadly. "I cannot give you justice for your peculiar troubles," the king announced, "but you have made my daughter laugh for the very first time. I promised her hand to anyone who could achieve such a feat. You shall marry her and be my son-in-law." The peasant, however, looked quite surprised and respectfully shook his head. "Oh no, your majesty," he replied. "I cannot marry your daughter. I already have a wife at home, and sometimes even one is more than enough for me." The king's smile vanished, and he exclaimed, "You are a bore." But the quick-witted peasant replied, "Lord King, what can you expect from an ox but beef?" The king, taken aback, chuckled and promised him 500 shining thalers in 3 days. As the peasant cheerfully walked out through the grand palace gate, a sturdy sentry, dressed in gleaming silver armor and a tall helmet with a plume, stopped him. "You made the king's daughter laugh," the sentry exclaimed, his voice full of admiration. "You are surely receiving something wonderful." "Indeed," replied the peasant. 500 thalers are to be counted out for me. The sentry, a burly man with a kind face, whispered, "Please, share some with me." The generous peasant, without hesitation, said, "You shall have 200. Just present yourself before the king in 3 days." A cunning Jew, a short, thin man with a long nose, a pointed beard, and a long, dark, slightly worn coat, overheard, and quickly ran after the peasant, offering to change his big thalers for smaller coins. The peasant agreed, giving him the remaining 300, expecting payment from the king. The delighted Jew returned quickly with a large purse filled with small, old groschen coins, 3 of which were worth only 2 good ones. A truly clever trick. He handed the purse to the peasant. 3 days later, according to the king's command, the peasant bravely stood before the king once again in the grand palace. "Pull off his coat," the king commanded, his voice cheerful, "and he shall have his 500. But the peasant, with a confident smile, held up his hands. Your Majesty," he announced, "those 500 thalers no longer belong to me. I generously gave 200 to your loyal sentry, and the other 300 were changed for me by that clever fellow there." Just then, the surprised sentry and the cunning Jew stepped forward, eager to claim their shares. The king, now understanding the clever peasant's plan, ordered blows to be delivered, strictly counted out to both the soldier and the Jew, a harsh but fitting lesson. The brave sentry bore his punishment patiently, but the poor Jew cried out sorrowfully, rubbing his backside, "Alas, are these the heavy thalers I was promised?" The king, witnessing this, could not help but burst into a mighty roar of laughter at the peasant's ingenious way of making others pay for his bad deals. All his anger vanished. "As you have already lost your reward so cleverly," the king said, "I will give you an even better one. Go into my royal treasure chamber and take as much money as you wish." The peasant, needing no second invitation, eagerly stuffed his empty, worn pockets with gleaming coins. At a bustling inn, counting his treasure, he muttered aloud, "That rascal of a king cheated me. How will I know if what I've got is even the right amount?" Unbeknownst to him, the cunning Jew, still smarting, secretly listened, thinking, "That man is speaking disrespectfully of our glorious king. I must inform him at once and get my own reward." "You must go to the king right now," the Jew urged the peasant, practically dragging him towards the palace. The wise peasant, however, shook his head. "A man with so much treasure cannot appear before the king in these old, ragged clothes. I must have a new coat made first." The Jew grew impatient, worried he would lose his reward. "I will lend you my own fine coat out of pure friendship," the Jew pleaded. The peasant, with a sly grin, agreed, peeling off his old tunic. Dressed in the Jew's too small, dark coat, he returned with the eager Jew to the king. The king glared at the peasant, recounting the disrespectful words. Your Majesty," the peasant said, shrugging in the Jew's coat. "What a Jew says is never true. That rascal is even capable of claiming that I am wearing his coat right now." "What?" shrieked the Jew, utterly astonished. The king, a wise ruler, quickly understood the situation. "This Jew," he declared, his voice firm, "has clearly deceived one of us, either me or the peasant." And so, with a clear judgment, he ordered that the Jew should receive another dose of strictly counted blows, a truly painful lesson about telling tales. The resourceful peasant, meanwhile, walked home a free man, still wearing the Jew's good dark coat, with his pockets now full of good hard thalers from the treasure chamber. As he happily strode along, he chuckled to himself, "This time, I truly hit the mark." He had not only gotten his money, but a fine new coat too, proving his cleverness till the very end. And so, children, this funny story of the peasant and his adventures teaches us a valuable lesson about cleverness and wit. It shows us that even when things go wrong and life seems unfair, A quick-thinking mind can often find a way to make things right. The peasant wasn't always honest, but he was certainly very, very clever. This story reminds us to think before we act, to be smart about who we trust, and to always use our sharp wits to solve problems, even the trickiest ones, with a touch of humor and cunning, just like the peasant.
Ever dreamed of being the hero? Now you get to be the star. Your adventure starts at TalesMio. Visit talesmio.com now.